Hi everybody, it's Julia here, and I'm going to help you get a little bit more comfortable with your Gelli Plate. Here are some materials that you need: some Gelli plates, some stamps, textured papers, stencils, both store-bought kind, any sort of other textures you have, and I'm also going to show you how to make some stencils of your own. I have a template in the downloads that you can use. You'll need a little Duralar or acetate, or Yupo paper, which is this other one is cut out of Yupo paper. Paints, assortment of papers, Gelli Plate paper is very good, rollers, baby wipes, paper towels and water, scissors, and a stack of papers. So I'm showing you the stencil. I have it as a downloadable template that you can use. You can cut out the circles with hollow centers or leave the centers whole, and we'll use these in our lessons later on. Our first step we're going to try is just using a brush application on the Gelli Plate and printing the brush strokes. I'm being sort of fussy about laying down my paper, but I wanted to show you how the colors overlap with some of the other colors that are already on the piece of paper. This will become an interesting piece of collage for later, with the dark blue overlapping the light green and the brushy strokes all over the page. Now we're going to try messing around with our stencils. You can make any sort of stencils that you like. This template just gives some basic shapes, and I'm showing you cutting out the first one. I stacked the Duralar over the template and then I'm just cutting it out. So finish cutting the rest of those out. Now we will apply some paint with a palette knife onto the Gelli Plate and roll it up with a roller. The paint isn't super thick in this case. We'll do some printing with thicker paint later on. I'm going to use the stencils, and once you use them once, you'll have paint on one side of them and they'll be much easier to see. And what you can get with this technique is layering over what you might have in the background. Just keep printing and printing. Lighter colors, darker colors will end up resulting in some interesting techniques and textures. This paint wasn't applied super thick, so I'll show you with the Gelli paper. You can often get some paint off of the stencil, but it wasn't that much wasn't left behind, but you can still get paint off from the plate. And I did that in a number of instances with some of our papers from last time. I'm showing you sort of how I've used the stencils to get different effects and layering. Now we're going to apply two different colors with a roller and not blend it too well so that there's some spots of different colors throughout the plate. This is a much thicker application. I'm going to use some of our Duralar stencils. And I'm going to experiment with starting with white paper, so we will have the opportunity to layer the second round. I'm just going to do this on 3 different sheets, even a book page. You can use old book papers, whatever papers you have around that you'll work with. This was much thicker in application, so there is some paint left behind that I can print off onto another piece of paper from each stencil, and that'll come in handy later on too. And then there is still paint left behind that I can print off onto another piece of paper here. And I'll just keep printing and pulling as much paint off as possible. I'm not really getting you a good close-up of the finished result here, but this will be a great piece of collage ephemera for later. There's still paint on my roller, so I'm doing one more pass of that. I don't want to waste any of the paint. And I'm going to use both the Duralar stencil and the paper that I originally cut out. And the paper will only give you one time after it sticks into the paint. It usually tears a little bit, and the Duralar is nice because you can use it over and over again. So this provides with some layers, and now I'm going to roll up some black. I'm using a heavy body black. For our end project, it might be good to have a couple of pages with some black on it so that you can get the collage that you want. What's also nice about this is a whole page of stencil will pull together something that you might have thought was sort of a mess before. Printing with a stencil in any solid color pulls that background together and makes that a more interesting piece. I'm also printing off the remainder of what's left on the plate from the black over some of my other papers to give me some different textures and darks and lights for when we're doing our collage. These are much more translucent colors. I love the golden fluid paints. You'll get a more sheer application, which will have different nuances depending on what you use. We're going to use some man-made stamps. You could also use any of the block printing stamps you've carved and any other lessons from Get Messy. I'm just going to press the stamp in a number of times, almost like the Gelli Plate is a big stamp pad, and then I can press that off onto one of my print pages, and then I can also print up what I've just stamped. And you can see some texture in the background. The yellow is light, and then I also have the stamp, and I'll print off some of the extra yellow that was on the borders. So what I'd like you to do is lay out all your papers in a sort of a rainbow assortment and decide if you have all the colors that you'd like to work with. Make sure you have some blacks and blues and yellows and greens and purples and pinks and all of your favorite colors in there, and lay this out so that when we're working on our next step, you can easily pull the colors you're looking for. So please print up the different templates that I'm providing for these fanciful creatures. I've done some dragons, a little fairy, a mermaid, an owl, and a jackalope for people that I know and Get Messy who really love the jackalope. I did that in your honor. And so pick out the colors, separate out the piece of the fanciful creature that you'd like to make first, and cut out each section. Here I'm showing you how I've cut out the pieces of the mermaid, and I can piece that together. I started piecing together one of the dragons here. I'm sort of showing how each piece came together. And then when I glue this one down, I would put its final piece on there. And then for our actual demonstration, I have put together a whole bunch of different papers. So I have one of the flying dragon, or the phoenix, over a background that has sort of a volcano-y end of the world kind of feeling with the yellows and the purples. And then I also used some of the papers to create a couple clouds that will give a little depth with one paper behind another. One of the papers is from a printed book, and one is just one of my pages. And then I used one of my big mandala stencils, and those will be sort of the hills that the dragon is flying over. So I'm using matte gel medium to paint, to glue it down, but you can use whatever glue you'd like that you're comfortable with. I also use a card to kind of make sure it's evenly distributed across the page. I have this big plastic piece of card from a mailer. So I'm going to glue the whole thing down. I'll just do a little bit here on the video, and then I'll jump ahead and show you what the finished one looks like. But I hope you'll give this a try. It is kind of fun, and I thought these little collage cutouts would give you a jumping off point to create your own. I look forward to seeing what you make.